Yeah, what up? Welcome in. It is the Nail in the Coffin podcast. I'm Drayson Ball. On today's show, the updated MLB power rankings for the previous week, and also my AFC South predictions as we continue to predict the upcoming NFL season. It's all coming up on today's edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. And jumping right into it with my updated MLB power rankings from the previous week. Starting off with an honorable mention, the Milwaukee Brewers, the honorable mention for this week. Playing a little bit better as of late. They're still in third place in the National League Central Division, but playing a little bit better this last week. Defeated Pittsburgh in their last game. Just 5-5 though in their last 10, but they are our honorable mention for this week. And cracking into the top 10 at number 10 is the Colorado Rockies. Coming off a weekend 2 weekends ago where they swept the Atlanta Braves, they did take a little bit of a step back this week. However, they did upgrade from my honorable mention last week into my top 10 this week. They have a great lineup. They have a really, really loaded lineup up and down, from top to bottom. And they've been scoring a lot of runs late in ball games lately. They scored, it seemed like every game in the ninth inning against the Braves in that series a couple weekends ago. And they scored a lot of ninth inning runs in the last couple of games as well. So they are a team to watch out late in the ball game, where they can push across a run or two if they need to win or to tie the game. I really like the way they're playing right now. They're currently just a game back in the American League, in the National League West, behind the Arizona Diamondbacks. I really like the way they play. You know, it's really awesome that they're doing so well in this division this season, because, you know, most people would have picked them third at best, maybe fourth, and they're just exceeding expectations. And I'm really happy for them. I'm really happy for the Rockies. They play tremendous on the road. Not so great at home. They're just 34-30 at home. If they can improve on that, I do like their chances going forward. You never know, they could win this division still, as they are just one game out of first, with about 35 or 40 games to go in the season. At number 9, the hottest team in baseball right now. I had a hard time putting these guys at 9 because they are just red hot right now. The St. Louis Cardinals. They just keep winning. Like, they're just in the business of winning right now. The St. Louis Cardinals. In the last 2 weeks, get this. Last 2 weeks of baseball, they've played the Nationals 4 times, the Brewers 4 times, the Brewers 3 times, the Dodgers 3 times, and the Rockies 3 times. They took 3 out of 4 from the Nationals. They took 2 out of 3 from the Brewers. They swept the Dodgers, and they just took 2 out of 3 from the Rockies this last weekend. They're red hot right now. And I had a hard time putting them at 9, but I just like the teams ahead of them a little bit better. You know, they kind of were absent for the first half of the season. They weren't really in the discussion, but they've caught fire. They've caught fire, as the old adage goes. They are still 4 games back behind the Chicago Cubs for the lead in that division, but they have passed the Brewers, who were in second place for the majority of the season. So, you know, watch out for them. Look out. They could easily crack their way into a wild card spot. And who knows? Maybe they could just take first place away from the Chicago Cubs. They're red hot right now. Red hot. I really like the way that they're playing, and they've been beating good teams. They've been beating good teams as well. So it's not just a winning, you know, a lot of winning against, you know, the likes of like the Royals or the Orioles or, you know, the Cincinnatis of the world. They're beating good teams, which is what's most important at this stage in the season. At number 8, the Cleveland Indians, down a couple spots from last week. They did lose twice to the Royals. I didn't like that. And I've just not been impressed with them all season long. I don't know why. They're a good team. They're 74-56 right now, and they're a good team, but I've not been impressed with them all season. Maybe it's just because they play in the American League Central, and that is by far the weakest division in baseball. I don't know. I think they're a good team, and I like them, but part of me almost feels like we've kind of told their story already. I mean, they lost the World Series of the Cubs in 2016, and then they got beat out early last season. I just feel like we've kind of turned the page on the Cleveland Indians. I don't know why. I just feel like their story has kind of been told, and they're now kind of on the back burner, hoping to kind of reclaim some of that World Series juice in 2016. I don't know. At 8 this week, we'll see how they do in the upcoming week. At number 7, my Atlanta Braves. Look, their pitching has been incredible over the last week or so. I saw somewhere that they'd only had allowed like a 1.26 ERA in the last week somewhere. That's incredible. That's really, really good. Now, their offense has slowed down a little bit in the last few days. They had a series with Pittsburgh, I believe. Yeah, with Pittsburgh and against Miami, a 4-game set against Miami. They swept the Pirates, but they just took 2 out of 4 from the Marlins. Their offense has slowed down just a little bit. It's just really incredible that they were able to win, 5 out of those 8 games. Sorry, 5 out of those 7 games on the road trip with their offense being, kind of a little bit down. It's because their pitching was so incredible. But if they can combine that offense that we saw towards the first half of the season with the pitching that's been really good as of late, watch out for the Braves. They really could do some damage. They are, holding their own. They're in first place in the National League. They've kind of gotten a little bit fortunate in the last couple of days because the Phillies lost a bunch. They've lost a bunch. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games. They lost a couple times to Toronto, and Washington got beat twice by the Mets last week. So they've been fortuitous a little bit with some of the losses from their rivals in the East, and so they've maintained a 3-game lead atop that division. So give them a little bit of credit for maintaining that 3-game lead, but also they have been a little bit fortuitous in that regard. So at 7 for the Braves. At number 6, the Arizona Diamondbacks moving up a spot or two, a spot from last week. It's just crazy with this division. Another week has gone by, and Arizona's still in the lead. I mean, let's not overlook that. Another week has gone by, and Arizona is still in the lead in this division. The Dodgers were clearly the favorite to win this division coming into the season, and Arizona still leads by a game over the Rockies. We can't overlook that. There are fewer days every day in the calendar to where they could relinquish first place, and another week has gone by, and they have not relinquished first place. They are in a dogfight with the Rockies, though. It's going to be really, really interesting to see how things will pan out with the Rockies and the Dodgers. One interesting note for the Diamondbacks, they play the Rockies and the Dodgers at home in the final week and a half of the season. They play 6 of their last 9 games against the Rockies and the Dodgers in the final 9 games of the season. All 6 of those games are at home, and then they go out to finish the season on a 3-game road trip against the Diamondbacks. Against the Padres. So that last week and a half could decide this division. And that's going to be an incredible race going down the stretch. You never know. I would never count the Dodgers out. I just won't count them out. They're still right there into it. And, they could certainly make a push and make a run. And that last week and a half of the season could be very interesting. At number 5, the Chicago Cubs. Look, this is another tough division. The National League Central has been, especially with the resurgence of the St. Louis Cardinals, it's another tough division. But the Cubs are holding their own. They're still 4 games in first place, and they're playing very well right now. They've won 7 of their last 10, including 5 in a row. They're just a great home team, and they've got more home games on the road than on the road going into the final portion of the season. I really like the Cubs. And I think that they will hold on. My gut feeling says that they'll hold on to the lead in that division. But I do think the Cardinals will give them a run for their money. So at number 5 for the Cardinals. Excuse me, for the Cubs. At number 4, the Oakland Athletics. They have cooled down just a little bit from last week. I was really high on them last week. I had them at number 2. Maybe I was a little bit crazy last week, but they have cooled down a little bit. They were one of the hotter teams last week, but I do have them at 4 this week. They have cooled down just a little bit, but they're still one of the best teams in baseball. Let's not kid ourselves. They're still one of the best teams in baseball, and they could pose a threat. They could pose some real problems for someone if they make it into the postseason. I would not want to face these guys in a one-game playoff to get into the postseason in that wild card game. I wouldn't. They're very talented, and I really believe in the adage of beware of the hot team. I said it last week. I said it on last edition of the MLB Power Rankings. Beware of the hot team. They can really get into the playoffs and make some damage if they are able to get into that wild card spot or even win that division. At number 3, the Houston Astros. They have been steady all season. They're picking up the slack. They had a kind of an off week last week, I would say, but they are playing better baseball as of late. They've won 5 in a row and are 7-3 in their last 10 games. So I'm liking what they're doing right now in their last couple of weeks. But like I said, they're still in that tight race with the Athletics. I feel like they will eventually hold them off. I do feel like the Astros will win that division. I just feel like they've won the World Series. They have that kind of veteran, presence and kind of know what it takes to win a division like that. I just think they will get the job done at the end of the day. I really like their pitching, and their lineup is just really good. We'll keep it there. At number 2, the New York Yankees. They've been playing great the last few weeks. Let's not kid ourselves. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. By far the best record in the last 10 games in the league. They're only 6 games back of the Red Sox. The Red Sox just got swept by the Tampa Bay Rays. And because of that, the Yankees are only 6 games back. Now, that may seem like a lot, but there's still a lot of baseball left to be played. We still got, about 30 games or so, 35 games for some teams left in the season. And if the Red Sox decide to cruise into the postseason, they may just be able to, the Yankees, they may just be able to swoop in and take that division away from them. You never know. I personally don't believe that will happen, but you never know. And at number 1, the Boston Red Sox. Look, they got swept by the Rays. Okay? I get it. But they're still the best team in baseball. Right? They're still the best team in baseball. There was a stat the other day that came out when they got swept that this was the latest into a season that someone had their first sweep of the season or something like that. That was incredible. Like, just baseball, just somewhere along the line, you feel like you'd get swept at some point. But into late August is when they got swept for the first time this season. They're still the best team in baseball. That sweep didn't faze me that much. The Rays are actually playing pretty good ball right now. They've also won 8 out of their last 10, so they are playing really good ball as well right now. So that didn't faze me that much. I still think the Red Sox are the best team in baseball, and they sit atop my MLB power rankings for this week. Moving right along with my AFC South predictions for the upcoming NFL season. Let's not waste any time and get right into it with the Houston Texans. I am predicting the Houston Texans will win the AFC South. And I have them winning 11 games this season. 11-5 for the Texans. Look, I think they'll place third in the playoffs behind the Patriots and the Steelers. I really like Deshaun Watson. I do. And who doesn't really? I mean, at this point, who doesn't like Deshaun Watson after the season he had last year before he got injured? He was incredible. He really was. If he would have kept that pace up throughout the entire season, there's no doubt he would have been the MVP. There's no doubt. I mean, we were talking about it in like week 7 when he'd thrown like a gajillion touchdown passes at that point. I mean, he was unbelievable to begin the season last year. And yeah, he is coming off an ACL injury. But, I think he can come back to that form, to where he was when he got injured last season. I think he could be an MVP candidate this season as well. I really like Deshaun Watson, and I think he'll be able to carry a good Texans roster to 11-5 and first place in the AFC South. Also, look for J.J. Watt to return to form. I really like J.J. Watt, and I think he's kind of had a down few seasons, but look for him to return to form. Their schedule's pretty favorable. It's very favorable, actually. They have one of the easier schedules that I've seen, and they really get a couple of breaks. They only have 2 tough road games, really tough 2 road games, and that's at the Patriots to begin the season, and at the Eagles near the end of the season. And you never know with that Patriots game in week 1. You might could steal that game in week 1. We saw what the Chiefs did to the Patriots last season to open the season. Went in there and stomped them out. You never know. A lot of new faces for the Patriots. A lot of, question marks there as well. You could easily see the Texans going into Foxborough and stomping out the Patriots week 1. So that's one of their tougher road games. But again, they could go in and beat them. If they put it all together. And they also have a few easy home games. They have the Giants, Cowboys, Dolphins, and Browns. Not easy, but very doable. They face them at home. The Giants, Cowboys, Dolphins, and Browns at home. So very, very winnable games for them all throughout the schedule. And that's why I like them to go 11-5 this season. I just really think they've got a very favorable schedule with only really 2 tough road games. Maybe 3 if you count the Redskins in week 11 after a bye week. But again, after a bye week, you have another extra week to prepare. I don't see that week 11 matchup with the Redskins as a huge threat after a bye week. So a very favorable schedule for them, 11-5 and first in the AFC South Conference. At 9-7, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, they were in the playoffs last season. I think they'll get into a wild card spot this year. A lot of people are high on Jacksonville. I get it. They're good. They talk a lot. They've got a good defense. I get it. But I think they will take a step back this season. That's just what my gut feeling says. They have a tough defense, and Jalen Ramsey's made headlines in the offseason. I really like Jalen Ramsey, by the way. But, they will be held back by Blake Bortles. It's no secret what he is and what he isn't. And I don't know if their defense will be strong enough to overcome some of the deficits that they'll face with Blake Bortles as their quarterback. I really think my personal gut feeling will tell you that their season will depend on Leonard Fournette and what kind of a season he has. If he has a monster season, a 1,700 yard season, maybe 10 to 15 touchdowns, I think they could overcome that. But if he has somewhat of a subpar season, it's going to be really tough for that defense to kind of carry that team. Their schedule is a little bit tougher than last year, but they do catch some breaks. They do get the Patriots, Steelers, Eagles, and the Redskins all at home. So that's very fortuitous for them that they get those 4 potential playoff teams at home, 3 very likely playoff teams, and the Redskins could certainly be in the playoffs as well. But they do have to face the Giants, the Chiefs, and the Cowboys on the road. But I think they could overcome that if they are playing their best football. So 9-7 could be really low for them. Who knows? They could go 12-4. You never know. I just feel like they'll have a little bit more of a target on their back this season because they've kind of talked a little bit of trash over the offseason, and I just don't think that they'll be able to play as well. But you never know. You could definitely see them winning double-digit games again this season. But 9-7 is where I have them. I do have them at a wild card spot. Obviously, towards the end of the season, it'll depend on playoff, rankings wherever they may be based on, tiebreakers and things like that. So in a wild card spot at 9-7. At 7-9, I have the Titans. I do have them falling short of the playoffs at 7-9. And I do get that they made the playoffs last season, but they weren't a playoff team. I mean, they made the playoffs because the AFC was kind of weak last season. But let's be honest, they weren't a playoff team. Marcus Mariota, I like him, but I don't feel like he's yet to develop into the quarterback that many thought he would be coming out of college. And I just don't see him taking a huge leap this season. I just don't. I just feel like the Titans will be very limited offensively, and I don't see that production coming from an improved Marcus Mariota. I really am rooting for him, but I just don't know what he is in this league, and I think because of that they'll be very limited offensively. Their schedule isn't terribly difficult, but they do face some challenges throughout the season. They face the Chargers, the Cowboys, and the Giants on the road, but they do get a break and face the Patriots and the Eagles at home. So that is a bit of a break for the Titans, but I don't know if they'll be able to overcome their early season scheduling. Between weeks 2 and 10, it's very difficult. Very difficult. They play the Texans at home, Jags on the road, Eagles at home, Bills on the road, Ravens at home, Chargers on the road, then a bye week in week 8. Then they go on the road to the Cowboys, home versus the Patriots, and on the road at the Colts in week 11, which will be very difficult as well. Plus, they have the Texans on the road in week 12. So it's very, very difficult early on for the Titans, and I don't know if they'll be able to overcome that tough schedule to begin the season. All those against our potential playoff teams, except for maybe the Bills. I don't see them making the playoffs this season, but everyone else I could see potentially making a playoff run. And finally, at 6-10, I have the Colts, and they will fall short of the playoffs, obviously, at 6-10. Yeah, they got Andrew Luck back, and he's healthy, but let's look at it this way. He's not throwing a football in almost 2 years. He did come into the league, and for 3 straight seasons, took his team a subpar roster to 11-5. But, he'll be rusty. He is a great quarterback, and I do think he will eventually return to form near the end of the season. But he's got a really tough roster to deal with. They really need to revamp that roster through free agency and the draft, and I just don't think that a rusty Andrew Luck will be able to overcome that roster this season and be able to really do any damage in this division. The roster, like I said, is very limited, and even with Andrew Luck, I just don't see them overcoming that roster this season. Their schedule also, not to mention, is quite difficult. Whereas the Jags and the Texans face the Eagles and the Patriots at home, they've got to play them on the road. So, it's very difficult. They also have to play the Redskins and the Raiders on the road, which may, depending on what your opinions, may or may not be tough games, but it's tough to play in Oakland, and the Redskins could surprise people and be a lot better than what people think. They could go 1-4 or 0-5 to start the season. It's a very tough schedule to begin the year. Home versus the Bengals, on the road to the Redskins and the Eagles, home versus the Texans, and at the Patriots. It's a very tough opening schedule, and not to mention it's a very tough closing schedule as well. The last 5 games of the season are almost as difficult as the first 5 games of the season. And at that point, teams are playing for playoff positioning, things like that. Final 5 weeks of the season at the Jaguars, at the Texans, home versus the Cowboys and Giants, and then at the Titans in week 17. For, again, teams that could be potentially getting into the playoffs or fighting for playoff positioning. So that's kind of where I see the Colts this season. Just quick recap. The Texans I have at 11-5. First in the AFC South and third in the AFC playoff picture. The Jaguars at 9-7, they will secure a wild card spot. The Titans at 7-9, they will fall short of the playoffs. And the Colts at 6-10, and they will fall short of the playoffs as well. That is going to do it for this edition of the Nail in the Coffin podcast. Don't forget to like the video down below and subscribe to the channel for more sports coverage on this channel. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you later.